Hello, welcome to my quick studies guide here, number 4. This one is going to deal with cut and scheduling in the extra settings. And this also kind of relates to the last one I did on cut and batches. And I'm going to start here with a slight retraction as well on that, which I did pin in the comments of that tutorial. So I incorrectly stated that the cut and batches increases memory and the amount of time to render. So it does increase the amount of time to render, but it actually does not affect the memory at all. So if you have it set at 4, that will take 4 times as long as if you have it set at 1. But other than that, it will not affect your memory. So right now I have resolution 768 by 512. My clip guidance is fairly low, 1500. And I have my usual model set up, which is the first 3 models and then the RN50 and secondary model unchecked. But let's go ahead and I'm just going to leave this on here. And the first render I do, I'll get the seed from that and we'll do a bunch of render here. And right now I have it's set on the default settings. So this is what we're looking at today. This section right here, the cut and scheduling. Now this does affect the memory. And the way you can see the memory is by clicking over here and hit view resources. And this will kind of show you how much memory your Colab is using. So right now I'm going to go ahead and run this cell. I believe I already got this ready to go with the other cells. Yeah, okay. So we're going to run this cell and I have it on the default settings and I'll kind of explain also what each of these does. So the cut overview, think of this as the big picture cuts. And what cuts are is it divides the image up and bases the diffusion on that. And technically, I'm not really sure what that does to chop the image up into little bits, but it makes it more coherent the more of these there are. I guess that's, technically I can't describe what it does, but this will increase your memory the more of these you have. And the way that the cut schedule works here, if you notice there's a number here, 12 times 400 and then 4 times 600. And then you have it reversed here in the inner cut. And it's 4 times 400, 12 times 600. So both of these numbers always have to equal 1,000. So it says here 40 cuts for the first 400 out of 1,000 steps, etc. So basically what this is, if we actually had 1,000 steps here, the first 400 steps, it would do 12 overview cuts, and then during the last 600, it would shorten that to 4, and then it would reverse that on the inner cuts. So the overview cuts, think of that as the big picture. Like let's say we're rendering a plate. So the overview cuts would do the circle of the plate, the big picture plate, and then the inner cuts would do like maybe little enamel details, like little flowers drawn on the plate. That's kind of a good way you could think of it. Like the inner cuts are the small details. The overview is the coherency, the main image that the prompt is. So this is the default setting they have. Now the IC POW, what this is this can provide, it can make a lot of duplicate items. It's kind of related to the detail as well. What it does, how Zippy's describes it, is it adjusts the size of the border. So by increasing it, you make that border larger, which can allow for finer details, but can also decrease the coherency. But I've noticed when you crank it up, you can get like duplicates of things. So and the icy gray here, what this is this actually adds a little bit of grayscale to your image. So that's supposed to kind of help with the definition to make a little bit of it black and white instead of color. And it does that for the first 400 steps out of 1,000 and none for the last 600. This is all the default. So let me just kind of explain the way this works too, this 400 and 600. So basically, even if you only have 100 steps, just think of this as a percentage. So if we just had 100 steps, for the first 40 steps, it's going to do 12 cuts. For the last 60, it would do 4. So no matter how many steps you have, it's going to use this, and you always have to have 1,000 in there, and it'll just use it like a percentage. So that's how this works, and that's what all of those are described as doing. I always think the best way though is to actually kind of see what their effects are. So let's go ahead now and do a run with the default settings. Okay, in my prompt here, I've just got something kind of simple here that'll hopefully add and take away items. I've got the interior of a vacation cabin at a lake by Thomas Kincaid. Okay, and while this is rendering too, I also want to point out the memory usage over here. So right now it looks like it's kind of in the yellow. So when you get to the red, that's when it can crash and things like that. So right now we're using quite a bit and we're in the orange. So this is how you can check on how much your cut scheduling and things like that are affecting memory just by clicking over here and hit view resources. Okay, our render here is finished, and you can see there's quite a bit of detail there, and it did put the interior of a cabin, looks like actually inside the lake. So we've got kind of an outdoor living room here. That's kind of funny. Okay, so that's how it interpreted. Now I'm going to keep the same seed here too, so we get the exact kind of same render here. Okay, so now we're just going to do one cut here. Another thing you can do, which I've been doing lately, is just turn this cut gray all the way off. I'll go ahead and do that on the next one, but that'll just take out the tiny bit of grayscale cuts that it does for the first 40%. And it's not set real high, it's set at zero point 0.2, so I assume that's 20%. But anyways, so I'm keeping the same cut schedule here, but I changed all the values to 1. So we're going to go ahead now, and this will be a real low value, so this will probably take away some of the detail. It will also make it use less memory and possibly save us on time. I think this is going to cut the time as well. So let's go ahead and start this, and we'll keep an eye here on our resources. Okay, our render is winding down here. You can see this is a really kind of a crude, messy looking render. It doesn't really look that good. There's not very much detail because we have those numbers so low. Okay, so you can see this one we have more outer detail but not much inner detail because we had 6 overview cuts. So the next one, we're going to go ahead and set the next one up to have 8 inner cuts during the second half of the render. So we'll go ahead and start that one. Okay, and here's our next render. This is the same as the last one, but if you see we changed the cut inner cut on the second part to 8. So it has filled out a lot more detail there in the middle there. And so the next one we're going to do is the cut IC POW. Now, overall, what that does is that kind of is similar to the intercut in that it'll render more detail on the inside, but it can also create a lot of duplicate objects. So it's good for certain things to turn it way up, like if you want a swarm of, bacteria or insects, that kind of thing. But I'll go ahead now and crank this all the way up to 80. You can turn this all the way up to 100, but I usually have it set between like 6 and 10, so it just depends on the render. But let's go ahead and turn it up to 80 and go ahead and run it, leaving all the other settings the same. Okay, and here is our final render with that cut IC PAL all the way up to 80. So if you notice, it rendered like multiple windows here and things, so it adds more detail, but can also add, like I was saying before, duplicates things. So I usually don't like to turn that up for landscapes, things like that. You might wind up with double horizon lines, that kind of thing. But I hope this showed kind of what the cut scheduling can do, and you can see even with the same prompt and the same seed how different this made the image look, especially the overview cuts. And you can split that up to, 500, 500, just to kind of control where you want the percentage. But I hope this helped you understand the setting, at least to kind of see what it does. And thank you for watching. I'm also going to go and release my weekly images now, which I will have the prompts and the settings up for on Patreon as well. So thank you for watching. More quick studies, tutorials, and of course my weekly images every week.